Hello everybody, is everyone alright? I'm alright, thank you. Today I want to do a very quick video. We've looked at some epic poetry, we've looked at some lyric poetry, and now I want to transition, as it were, to the next phase of Western literature, and that is the ancient Greek tragedians. We're looking at drama.
The drama.
So I want to look at Aeschylus, whose works I have read, or at least whose surviving works I have read. And with Greek tragedy, there's three main guys, isn't there? So we have Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, and they're the only ones who have survived, at least the tragedians. And it's kind of annoying because, I mean, Aeschylus, he wrote 90 plays, and of those 80 to 90 plays, only 7 have survived. And I want to talk mainly about 3 of them today, which is the Oresteia trilogy. But I will talk about the others as well briefly because I read them again, and I think it is interesting. In terms of where the theatre, like Greek tragedy and Greek theatre, originated, people aren't really sure exactly when it happened. But the thing that makes most sense to me is that you have the epic oral storytelling tradition, Homeric storytelling tradition, of someone telling or singing a story. And then on the other side, you have these religious festivals, these religious rites, specifically to the god Dionysus. And there would be a chorus of people who would, through song and dance, tell stories about Dionysus. And at some point, people realised, or people kind of discovered, that it was more fun, instead of just telling the story, you could enact it. Now, there was someone before Aeschylus called Thespis, who is credited as being the first actor, and that's where we get thespian from. It would be him as an actor and the chorus. The chorus would kind of give sort of general exposition-y stuff, and then he, as an actor, would play the part of a hero or a god or someone. And the way that he would differentiate between different characters, that he would go off and come on again in different masks. And so masks became the big thing about, depicting different characters. What good old Aeschylus is credited with doing, as a big old innovation in this type of thing, is that he added an actor, so there'd be 2 actors as well as a chorus. And that means having 2 actors playing named parts. Those characters could talk to each other and therein create dramatic conflict.
I never cheated on you!
That was cheating on me!
Now, of course, Greek theatre was a major deal back in the day. They absolutely loved it. So much so that it sort of became a civic duty to go to the theatre.
The theatre.
I don't really know how this worked, but apparently there would be thousands upon thousands of people sitting on a hillside or in a sort of man-made amphitheatre watching a play or watching a series of plays. And when I say thousands, I mean thousands. And the way that it worked is that you would have a tetralogy of plays. So a playwright would present a tetralogy, 3 of which would be a cohesive trilogy. And then you would have a satire play at the end, which was a comedic kind of send-up of what you'd just seen. And we don't have any surviving satire plays apart from one by Euripides, apparently, which we shall get to, I suspect. And with Aeschylus, Aeschylus is an important figure in history because his trilogy, the Oresteia, is the only extant trilogy that we have. So it sort of gives a good sort of general idea about what Grecian audiences would be presented with. And yes, I'm going to be talking mostly about that, but I want to talk a little bit about the others because I think they're interesting. So I've read this before. This is Prometheus Bound and Other Plays, and this is translated by Philip Vellacott. And these plays are annoying, only in that I wish we did have all of the trilogies, because as plays on themselves, they don't really work, like, dramatically. They're interesting to read, and you can sort of imagine as part of a story they would be amazing and all the rest of it. So the ones that I really like, Prometheus Bound is my favourite of these 4 single plays, and I wish we had the other 2. I talked fleetingly about Prometheus Bound in my Book of Job video, because it is about the nature of suffering at the hands of gods and stuff. But really it's about, is it better or worse to know your suffering in advance? Is it better to know how you are going to suffer in advance, And if you were to know that, would you change things? So Prometheus knows how he is going to be tortured, but he still decides to kind of hold on to his values, sort of thing, which is interesting. Seven Against Thebes, you can see, might be good in terms of the whole trilogy, but it's just like it would be like watching Return of the Jedi without having New Hope or Empire Strikes Back available, and so you just watch Return of the Jedi. It's like, oh, great. That might be false equivalence, but that's how it sort of seems to me. So yeah, I mean, and the Persians. I mean, the Persians is not very interesting as a play in of itself, but it is interesting when you think that it is the only surviving Greek tragedy which deals with real events and recent real events that had happened. So the Persian War that had happened 7 years prior to it being performed. So that's interesting. Also, I mean, if we look at AESCHYLUS, I mean, he was born in 525 BCE, and he became like a really big deal in terms of playwriting too. So these plays would be performed as competitions, and he won loads of them, and so he was well regarded. But the main thing that he is known for now is the Oresteia trilogy. I have read 2 translations of it. One is this is by Philip Vellacott, which provides, sort of notes and all the rest of that. But the thing that I really loved was this, which is Ted Hughes's version, and I loved. This is like the one that I really, really love, and I think it's quite good for a poet to, translate these sorts of things, because he really does get the imagery and the sort of the savagery and can sort of, with the turn of a phrase, kind of really make you go, ooh. There's no notes or any kind of like explanatory stuff in this. It's literally just the play, but yes, I did like it a lot. So the Oresteia, I mean, it's about the shift from Homeric vengeance and violence. Odysseus going into the hall and slaughtering all the suitors. It's from that sort of thing to law and order. And the 3 plays are Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers, and the Eumenides. So it starts with Agamemnon, and Agamemnon, I mean, I think it's generally perceived as being the best of the 3, and I would kind of agree with that. A few more different things happen in it, and I think just structurally it's structured quite well. It starts with a sort of minor character watchman kind of waiting for the beacons to be lit, and then they are lit, and it's like, oh, something's happened with the Trojan War. Have we won? Have we lost? And the chorus is made up of the elders, the male elders of the city of Argos. So these were men who were too old to go to fight in the Trojan War. And so they've been stuck there for 10 years with the women of Argos. And they're a bit hesitant. They're like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? And then Clytemnestra, who is Agamemnon's wife, she has been waiting for 10 years for his return because she wants to enact vengeance herself, because Agamemnon, 10 years prior, sacrificed their daughter Iphigenia for favourable winds. There was no wind to help them sail to Troy, and in order to appease the goddess Artemis, for some reason Agamemnon had to sacrifice his daughter, which he does, and which the chorus relate in kind of gory detail at the beginning. And so Clytemnestra, obviously, she's not too happy with this, and so she's been plotting her vengeance. As well as that, she's also been having an affair with a guy called Aegisthus, and he has a whole kind of backstory, violent, weird, nasty backstory, which I won't go into. But basically, he also has a vendetta against Agamemnon, and so they are sort of eagerly awaiting his return. And so he does return, to sort of compound Clytemnestra's anger at him. He returns with a concubine, Cassandra, who I think is King Priam's daughter. Cassandra is interesting in that she has been cursed with this thing of being able to see the future. She can see the future, but she's cursed with no one believing her if she tells what the future is. So yeah, so they return, and Clytemnestra is kind of very like, oh, hello, you're very welcome. And she lays out a kind of a purple carpet for him to walk on into the palace. And this is kind of like it sort of serves 2 purposes. I mean, it's meant to be sort of like a ritual welcome home, but also, of course, we know that it's a sacrificial kind of ceremony almost. And Agamemnon's a bit kind of hesitant to do it because it shows pride with the gods, but then he does it. He goes into the palace, and then Clytemnestra is like, and so she follows him in. Cassandra has a bit of a moment where she goes, "Oh, Agamemnon, and we're gonna die," but the chorus are like, "No, you're not." And so she enters the palace eventually. And then, of course, some screams are heard because you weren't allowed to depict violence on stage. So screams are heard, and Clytemnestra arrives with the bodies of Agamemnon and Cassandra. At which point Aegisthus arrives, and they basically say, "We're in charge now." And that's basically Agamemnon. So yeah, so you have this sort of slow kind of build-up of foreboding and presentiment, and something is going to happen, something nasty is going to happen. And of course, you know, you have Clytemnestra presenting the bodies to everyone. Yes, I like it a lot. And Ted Hughes is, as I say, language and stuff is just fabulous. The Libation Bearers, the second play, is basically where the trilogy sort of takes its shape, and you sort of see what the theme is going to be, because it's a few years later, and Clytemnestra's son and daughter, Orestes and Electra. So Orestes has been banished, and Electra is now part of the sort of slave women. Clytemnestra has been having bad dreams about various things, about snakes biting her and things, and so she's like, "Oh gosh, the spirit of Agamemnon, I have to sort of appease him." So she sends all the slave women and Electra to go and pour libations on the grave. And it's there that Electra meets Orestes for the first time in years. They then plot to murder Clytemnestra, and they're a bit kind of they're not really sure whether to do it or not, but the chorus of slave women say, "Yes, do it." So they do. So they plot to infiltrate the palace in disguise, or Orestes plots to infiltrate the palace in disguise, and then kill Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. And there's a great moment with Orestes and Clytemnestra, basically Orestes revealing himself and saying, "I'm going to kill you," and Clytemnestra kind of going, "No, please don't." But yes, then he leads her into the palace and got dead. So yeah, Orestes is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because his father has been murdered, he has to avenge his father's death. However, in order to do that, he has to kill his mother. And to kill your mother invokes the fury of the Furies. And the Furies are these kind of really sort of terrifying snake-haired women who sort of come out of the ground and go, "Meow!" And so immediately they sort of come out, and Orestes has to run away. And that's the Libation Bearers. In terms of play in of itself, I mean, this is why I'm sort of annoyed with the other plays that we don't have the full trilogy, because imagine if that was the same for the Oresteia and we only had the Libation Bearers. It would be kind of a bit like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, so it's just really, really lucky that we have the full thing, so that we can see that, oh yes, we can see the sort of the mastery, I guess, if you like, of AESCHYLUS and how he could weave a story over 3 plays. So yes, so now we have the last play, the Eumenides. Orestes is being chased by the Furies. He tries to seek sanctuary with Athena, who is, you know, a big goddess. And so you have Apollo, who is on Orestes' side, and then the Furies, who are on Clytemnestra's side. And Athena says that the only way to sort of figure all this out is to have a trial. And so they do. So they pick 12 people from the city, and they have this trial about whether Orestes should be punished by the Furies for committing matricide. The Furies' argument is that yes, he should, because he's killed his mother, and that's, you know, the worst thing you can do. Apollo's argument is kind of, yeah, it's kind of what it is, which is basically that mothers aren't really parents; they're actually just vessels to grow the child for the father, basically. Yeah, that's his thing. It is a hung jury. It's split down the middle, and so Athena has the final vote, like Shirley and Strictly, and she decides to acquit Orestes. And this immediately makes the Furies very, very angry. But at the end of the play, basically, she tells the Furies to how about you be kind instead?
There's always time for kindness.
She changes their names to the Eumenides, which means the kindly ones, and so they're going to reside, I think, in Athens or in the ground of Athens or something, and they are going to be very, very revered as deities and kind of look over the city, not in a kind of like a way, but in a kind of like a rational way. I've heard that people say that the end is kind of an anticlimax, and I don't think it's an anticlimax. It's a credit to Ted Hughes' version that it doesn't feel like an anticlimax, because his language is like fabulous. So, for example, the time of brute force is past. The day of reasoned persuasion with its long vision, with its mercy, its forgiveness has arrived. The word hurled in anger shall be caught in a net of gentle words, words of quiet strength. The angry mouth shall be given a full hearing. I understand your fury, but the vendetta cannot end. The bloody weapon cannot be set aside till all understand it. Yeah, I just like it. Pity is like a butterfly in a fist as the knuckles whiten. So yeah, I love it. So yeah, so that's Aeschylus. Next up is Sophocles, who does another innovation by adding a third actor into the mix, which we shall look at. And yes, and then we have Euripides. But before them two, I am currently reading other things, so we won't get to Sophocles just yet. But yes, I wanted to just share my thoughts of Aeschylus, which I do like. I do like Aeschylus, but I'm just annoyed that we don't have more of his stuff, because I think having the Oresteia trilogy just shows how great he is. But the other plays, yeah, it just leaves me annoyed, basically. But yes, thank you for watching if you've been watching. That's been Aeschylus, and yes, next up we shall either be looking at Sophocles or some epic poetry from further afield. So yes, I shall see you later. Bye-bye.
The drama.